Good morning. Good morning. Okay, we're getting there. Good morning. Excellent. You're awake and your students aren't, and that's the way Saturday mornings should be. I'm Crystal Judd. I'm the president of Sarah Lawrence, and it's a great pleasure and privilege to welcome you here today. As I was meeting with some of you over at the pub, a couple of people said, we're really looking forward to your speech. So these are my notes for today. Because I really view this morning as a great opportunity for us to have a conversation. So I'm going to give you some brief updates on what's happening in the campus, and then we'll open it up into Q&A. And I'm joined with Kenwal Singh, Provost and Dean of the Faculty, and Danny Trujillo, Dean of Studies. We'll introduce some other people in the room. But first, let me do a little bit of surveying. I don't do this as well as our Dean of Admissions, Kevin McKenna. But for the parents, grandparents, family members, all of you in the room, who is here this weekend with a first-year student? Hands up if you're here with a first-year student, okay? And glance around, see that? Okay, hands down. Who's here with a sophomore? Welcome back. Thank you for being here. Anybody here with a junior? Okay, great, terrific. Over here. Anybody here with the class of 2019? Any seniors in the room? Okay. So there are a couple of things that you'll learn about that, but one of them is that I would also, one of the things you learn, I'm a parent of a college senior as well, is they probably now for your first years, but by the seniors see these weekends as completely transactional. Your job is to show up and take them to eat at certain places at certain times, and the programming in their minds has nothing to do with how well you attend to or not. How many grandparents in the room? All right, and I saw a few others today. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being here as grandparents. Okay, so who's here from the 5 boroughs? Any part of the 5 boroughs of New York, okay? So we've got some local people. Who is here from the tri-state area? Okay. Who is here from anywhere on the East Coast? Anywhere on the East Coast, all the way down to Florida. I saw a Florida family. All right, who's here from California? Okay, thank you. Who's here from Minnesota? All right, look at each other. I knew there were 2 families, okay? You got Minneapolis and St. Paul. I met you this morning. I wanted to make sure you got connected. Who's here from Tennessee? Tennessee. Okay, the other people are still eating. There's another Tennessee family here. Or they're off doing something else. So, and I know we have a couple of international students who have grandparents here who are U.S. based, and the students are international, and we've got a whole array. So one of the things that I want to thank you for is the diversity that you bring to this room and that you bring to our campus. So we have students from almost every state in the nation and from over 40 countries who are here as part of the undergraduate community that we have here at Sarah Lawrence. And as I say to the students, this is the first and perhaps the only time in your life where somebody else is going to make the decision about who your neighbors are. You wanted to come here, we wanted you to come here, but we actually chose and put together this class, and then we said, now live together and figure it out. And that's an incredible opportunity, especially for this moment and this time in our country, where we see so much of our own pulling back into those who are like us around us in terms of where we choose to live, in terms of who's next to us, who we know. So we really encourage them to take advantage of the fact that they are surrounded by students who come from very different environments, from very different backgrounds, from very different parts of the country or from the world, from different language experiences, from different religious experiences, and to really get to know that in an intimacy. And as you all know, there's also a forced intimacy of that. If you've been somebody who grew up with your own bedroom for all your life and you're suddenly in a triple, that's about navigating and negotiating a kind of intimacy of a new sort that will set you up well for the world. A couple of updates about where we are this year, and we've been off and running. Many of you saw the slideshow, and I suspect that may get put up and running for us as we finish. We have a terrific first-year class. All of our students are terrific. I didn't overlook any of you in the room. First year class is a large class for us this year. We have a small senior class, and so that's balanced with the total enrollment. But that has meant that it has felt and is very full on campus. You've seen the Barbara Walters Campus Center, which will be open by this time next year. We will be doing this conversation next year in one of the rooms in the center. We will be thinking about how we celebrate that opening and making sure that we know a time to engage families with that. But a few weeks ago, we raised the final steel beam in that room. We highlighted that with the senior class. They signed the beam. It's all on the website. I'd encourage you to go see it. We let the senior class be the ones that we highlighted because they will have lived through 18 months of construction, and they will graduate with a building that's not yet open. So we wanted them to be the first ones in the building. If you go out and look, you'll see there is a white beam that's about the second one in on the top. But then we very much look forward to their coming back to enjoy it. But not only is the Campus Center well underway, in a few weeks we'll be finished with a new amphitheater that is between the Performing Arts Center and the new dorms, RTG, still known in some ways as the new dorms. That was a gift. Both of these, both the Campus Center and the amphitheater, are fully donor funded. Fully donor funded, which is very important. And the amphitheater will give us a new outdoor space and a space for connection. And both of those buildings, the Campus Center and the amphitheater, as I just said, are part about how we bring together and how we work as a campus. We are this year doing a series called Difference in Dialogue. The first panel that we have for that series will be next Tuesday night. It's called Women Running for Office. We have our state senator, assembly person, a local mayor, somebody from Yonkers. It's be moderated by Katie Hood, who is the director of the One Love Foundation. Ask your student if they know about that panel happening on campus, and if they don't, encourage them to come. We will have various ways for you to engage. We also have a panel on free speech and probing the bounds of free speech in dialogue. Panel on religious pluralism, panel of college presidents coming to talk about campus climate. We have things that are happening in classes and across them. So it's a very exciting cross-institutional initiative this year that your students can be part of, but that you can also be part of from a distance. We, yesterday, how many people made it yesterday to celebrate Sarah Lawrence, celebrate SLC, right? So, thank you for those of you who were there. That's an event that we began last year, and we rolled it out this year on Family Weekend for the first time event last year. We are looking forward to continuing that. There will be a lot of video that comes up. It's the best way to see what we're about because it crosses everything our students are doing and the kind of work that they're doing. So there were science experiments, there were early childhood representations, there were pop-up readings, there were plays, there were musicals. So we encourage you to do that. And the last thing that I'll say, just as an update, a couple of you kindly commented on the work I did with the green team this year. I do go for green. Seeing that, I have taken the plunge. I have an Instagram account now, SLC Prez, P-R-E-Z. My daughters have been brutal in their helpful criticism as I launched that. Students here have been incredibly helpful in introducing me to which kinds of captions work and which ones don't, and what boomerang is, and when you do video, and what my aesthetic should be. But it's a good way. There is an under-the-radar contest going on I heard about getting in a selfie with me on my Instagram. So maybe a way for you to see your sons and daughters. And then before we move to the panel, I get questions a lot that says, what can we as families do? How can we help? What kinds of things can we do? One of them, and we talked about it with those of you who are first-year parents as you dropped your students off, is you can be the resource to listen and to help reconnect. When there are issues that are going on, the problem is not yours to solve for your student, but you can be the resource to both listen and turn that around and say, have you asked this? Have you talked to your roommate? Have you talked to your RA? Have you talked to a dean? Have you encountered this? So that's your first job as families. The second one is to ask you to be a resource not only for your student, but for their friends. For their friends. So many of you are here, which is terrific, but we have students who don't have family here because they're from too far away. So when you're going out to the great dinner tonight, if the roommate doesn't have anybody here, think about asking them to join you. If you're back here at other times, my daughters became very strategic about this. They and their roommates would strategize which families were there at which time to maximize dinner opportunities. Some of you are laughing, that's because you're not seeing your parents. They're not here because they're already part of that strategy. That's a brunch somewhere right now, probably. But get to know those other students, because you can be a good resource, and getting to know your students' friends is incredibly enriching. And you will make relationships that will last well beyond Sarah Lawrence as you get to know their friends and their acquaintances. But you can also help us by increasing our networks. So if you have an opportunity in your work to have an internship, you could do that for Sarah Lawrence. If you have an opportunity to connect and to be helpful for us in an area that we're not working in, you become part of our larger network. So it's not only our alumni, but our families who are that network of resources for life beyond Sarah Lawrence. You can help us in a simple way. Sorry, I'm getting this feedback. I walk around with this mug often. The green kind of clashes, but we're very inclusive. I like to say about our greens, whatever green you're in is a Sarah Lawrence green. For me, there's a little risk when I get on a cross-country flight and I have a Sarah Lawrence mug. It's happened to me last fall, and the person next to me says, "Oh, what do you do at Sarah Lawrence? My daughter just applied early decision." And we had 4 hours next to each other ahead, and it was a great conversation. But the moments that you do this is not about supporting our bookstore by what you buy. It's the fact that if you have the mug or the hat or the shirt, that you meet somebody in your life back home who says, "Oh, Sarah Lawrence," and it allows you to open a conversation about who we are. It allows you to think about and refer to us students who would be good Sarah Lawrence fits. It allows you to remind the guidance counselor that you meet or the people in your work. So that expanded network is really helpful for us, and the easy way to do it is to have a mug sitting on your desk or to occasionally have the hat. You will find, those of you who went to other places, when you're wearing something for your alma mater, that somebody may come up to you if you're wearing it and say, "Oh, I went to Rice University." "Oh, I went to Rice." "What was your college?" Because that's our identity. And you say that, and then you move on. Somebody will say, "Oh, Sarah Lawrence, what are you doing?" And I can guarantee you that if they're a Sarah Lawrence person, the conversation will be a 20 or 30-minute one. It won't just be, "When were you there?" It will be, what is your child doing? Who are they studying with? Do they know this faculty member? Are they doing that? But do those conversations for us. They're incredibly helpful. And then finally, think of yourself as an extended part of our Sarah Lawrence family, not only in those internships or telling the story, but when in your community you get an invitation from us to a regional event. It might be an alumni talk. It might be, take advantage of that and come and meet other people and become part of that community, because we have former parents who still connect with us in Chicago, in Minnesota, in LA, in San Francisco, and it's incredibly helpful to have that multi-generational connection or moving across it. We have a parents' council. We have been revamping that slightly this year. You will see that in your folder there's a notice about the parents' council. There's a reception at the president's house, at my house, the college's house in which I live, the president's house, this afternoon at 4:30. If you want to know more about the Parents' Council, we'd be delighted to have you stop by that reception and meet people. But there are many ways in which you can be engaged and support us, and we're grateful for that. Now we're going to open up to questions. So here are the ground rules for the questions. You can ask anything you want, except it needs to not be the specific thing about your student at this moment, at this time, right? It needs to be a question that you can generalize. And we will answer your questions, and we have forms and ways for you to do it about the specific thing that you're trying to figure out. If it's a generalized one, by all means. And I will do some of the traffic finding. In addition to Kenwall and Danny, who are here, I want to point out a few other people who are in the room. Paige Crandall. Paige, stand up. Paige is everything. Okay. Paige is the person who's done all of our organizing this week. Paige is, as the director for our student affairs, can answer many, many of your questions. You've all met her before, but Paige is here. Josh is head of our student organizations and directors. Josh can answer a number of those questions. Cheryl Cipro in the back is a connection who works with our parents in varieties of ways. I saw Mo come in the room and go out. Mo, she's still here? Mo Gallagher, who keeps everything put together here in amazing ways from facilities. Next to Mo is Debbie Finkelstein, who runs all of our events and takes care of everything. Brian, who's helping with our filming in AV today. So there are a lot of people you'll see around today. And then also in the formal program, you'll see opportunities to talk about health and wellness. You'll see, when that happens on campus, I ask the person to say hello to their mom from the president. Say hello to your student who has finally woken up. You will have health and wellness. Follow the program today, our career services people, so we have a lot of opportunities. But this is the time for your questions, so go. Number one.
Okay, so when you look at the course catalog, there's kind of an obvious difference in terms of availability of courses in some areas. If you compare, for example, the courses in chemistry to the courses in writing, maybe like a 5-to-1 ratio. I want to ask, is that way of looking at it, is that misleading? Is there, because it looks from, to my view, that if a student, for example, want to study chemistry or physics, that the opportunities they look limited, as opposed to if you wanted to study theater, you would never be able to take all the courses. So that's.
So I would say, hi, I'm Kenwell Singh. I'm Provost and Dean of Faculty and a member of the Physics faculty, actually. So thank you for that question. I think if you look at any institution's catalog, what you will see is a snapshot of the evolution of the institution and where it happens to be at a certain moment in time. And there's always variability across areas about how many courses, how many people are employed to teach in any one area or another. Sarah Lawrence's strength has traditionally been in the creative arts and the humanities, and that's why you do see that the catalog is very, very, very full in those areas. And some of the other areas at the college have smaller faculties and can have a smaller course selection. However, I would say that what we do offer, I'm going to take physics and chemistry as an example, is a full complement of courses in the sense that students who have had no experience or very little experience in the sciences can enter. Students who have in their minds that they are on the path to graduate school can certainly go through. And one of the great things about the way we work is that the flexibility of our system allows students to work with faculty to get all of those courses they need, if they need a very specialized trajectory, even if you're not seeing it in a given year in the catalog, specific courses. So that works through our formal coursework, the conference work that goes along with the seminar courses, which we sometimes call a shadow curriculum, with internship opportunities and research opportunities. So there are a whole bunch of different ways that we make the spectrum available.
And I think the PS that I would add to that is that, remember, all of those classes you see in writing are small classes. So part of it is about a distribution that is happening that has the individual title of the class, but it's not as though students are navigating it in a, they could, as you said, they couldn't take them all. So part of it is small classes shows them in different ways. Next question.
Hi, my name is Patty. Could you talk a little bit about the interview process for classes and the sort of philosophical and pedagogical rationale that underlies that?
Sure. I'm Danny. We can both respond.
We can tag team.
Danny Trujillo, Dean of Studies. The interview process is something that's unique and distinctive about Sarah Lawrence. And if you have students at other colleges or you hear from their friends, many colleges have a shopping period for classes where it's sort of trial and error. The nice aspect about the interview process is it allows the student, and it's not the faculty member interviewing the student for admittance into the class. That's not it at all. It truly is, and we say this to students all the time, it's the student interviewing the faculty member to find out more about the class and to see if the class will be a good fit for that student, given their previous course of study, as well as where they want to go with that course. So the interviewing process really, it's a great way for one to learn more about a course, but it also is a great way for students to meet faculty. So oftentimes students will interview with a faculty because they're interested in a course, and sometimes based on that interview, they'll actually end up wanting to take that course. So what seemed like kind of just a one-off, let me just see what this is about, becomes something that's very interesting to the student, and it is a great way to meet faculty as well.
And let me address the second part of your question about whether there's a philosophical underpinning. There really is to it. And I think you all know that at Sarah Lawrence, students craft trajectories in collaboration with their academic advisors, who we call Dons. And that means that we have a very strong belief that every choice that's made by a student in crafting that trajectory should be quite intentional and should work together to form a coherent whole. And part of that idea of really exercising one's agency for us begins with that interview process of saying, rather than just going through a course catalog and picking things based on a short description and a title, we want you to go talk about the kind of work that you might be doing in the class, the kind of conference work you might be doing in class, also if it's a seminar conference course, and to fully explore the possibilities of that course before making your choice. And the whole idea of that crafting of the trajectory, we say, starts at the registration process. So that's the philosophical piece behind the interview. I'll also say, to follow up on what Danny said, it's a wonderful way to meet faculty. It's a wonderful way to meet other students. Also, that happens a lot, that as you're going through the interview process, you're crisscrossing with others who are interested in some of the same areas, and those serendipitous conversations follow.
And as most of you know, I'm in my second year at Sarah Lawrence and have been in a number of academic institutions. So, and I'm a parent of three. The last one is senior in college, so I've been through watching it at different times. So I want to add a pragmatic part to it. Because you may be saying, how efficient is it to work through a process of interviewing, given that if classes are going to be kept small, you are bound to have to interview for more classes than you're going to end up being signed up for, because if there's high demand for one or another. And so part of what it does is help our students begin to branch out and explore and meet different faculty than they would even encounter if they simply pre-registered, showed up, got their 3 classes, went through those 3 classes and on. So it's about pushing out into those conversations and understanding the narrative.
First of all,
I should have said this. Can you say what your name is and what year your student is?
Yes. My name is Ann Underland, and my child is freshman.
Thank you.
A fresh person. And I first want to say that the first couple of weeks have been fantastic. Like, what you've been doing for, sort of orientation has really, really been great. And the Dawn thing, oh my God, already so helpful. My question is, in the wake of Kavanaugh, what is Sarah Lawrence doing in terms of talking to the students, training the students about issues of consent, assault, all these kinds of things?
So let me step back and actually answer a question you didn't ask, and we'll go into how we work and talk and train our students around sexual harassment and assault. But in the broader sense of the wake of national political issues, some of you have asked, how are our students being encouraged to vote, or are they being encouraged to vote? And so I want you to know, and Josh has helped do this, we have launched a program called Turbo Vote, which allows you online to register to vote in any of the 50 states. It reminds you when you need to get your absentee ballot. If you want to register in New York, we tell you how to register to vote in New York, and we are trying to make sure at every opportunity we help our students understand what it is to be engaged citizens. And that part of the panel next week on women running for office is talking about this political moment, why women across the spectrum are running for office, what that means throughout. And so I would encourage you to encourage your students to register to vote, to become informed voters, to make their decision about whether they vote absentee or whether they vote in New York and what that means, because this is a very important time. Now, to the specific question about how we train students around issues of Title IX, sexual assault, consent, Danny, you want to?
Sure. Well, it does start from orientation. We spend actually a considerable amount of time not only talking about definitions of consent and terminology, but also, we're very fortunate in that we have great community resources not only within the Sarah Lawrence community, but also outside of the Sarah Lawrence community. So during orientation, and actually throughout the year, both those resources internally and externally meet with students, talk about the various victim advocacy resources, medical resources, confidential resources, and also our Title IX coordinator also meets with students, all students, when they enter Sarah Lawrence and throughout the year. Now, as you can imagine, we have some very motivated students who like to take initiative. So we have student groups also who do peer-to-peer work in education and prevention. Our campus committee on student life has a subcommittee around education and prevention as well. So there are ongoing education and prevention throughout the year. And I think that's very important. And of course, even in residence, our RAs do programming around these issues, relationship and otherwise. So I think it's very important. The one thing, and Josh gave me that number, and I'll ask you for the number, as far as the online voter registration, how many students have used that system?
250 have used it to register to vote. So those are new registrations, and 450 total have used the system for notifications and other pieces of it.
So it's very well used. Paige?
I'd just like to add one resource too, that we do have a support group that works through our health and wellness for those who are survivors, because we know that the Kavanaugh hearings and other things that have been going on have created some possibly difficulties for survivors, so we want to make sure that they have that support. One of our offices also did a check-in with students. We didn't really just say because it was the Kavanaugh hearings, but that was what it was for, is to see how students were doing. So there's definitely been a lot of different groups, a lot of different activities, actions. It's on Us Box are two of the groups, the big groups that Danny talked about. So even during orientation week, there was even a session called like a sleepover they did. It really wasn't a sleepover, but they talked about consent in a very informal way that really, I think, appealed more to the students than me talking to them. So there is a lot of different activity that is going on around the issue in general.
There's a hand up.
There's a hand over
Here? Yeah.
Could you say a little more about the counseling for future graduates? How the even at the beginning, at the freshman level, but beyond that, how you prepare people to serve the ugly outside world.
So the question is, how do we prepare students for life beyond Sarah Lawrence? And I'd like to ask Kenwal and Danny to take that in two ways. One is the way in which we think about how our academic trajectory is preparing students for a variety of ways that they will work in the world beyond, and the intersection with what our 24/7 residential life we know where a campus is doing in career services. The one thing I'll say as a preface is, as I meet Sarah Lawrence alumni in the world, almost always the encounter will start with this way. And this week, I get to name drop as the president. So I sat with Alice Walker this week, who is a Sarah Lawrence alumna, which was terrific, right? And she, like so many other people at a certain point, said what the language she used was life-changing. Other people will say, I don't use words like transformative, and they pause and they say, but my Sarah Lawrence education was transformative. So they don't just say, I learned things or I got this. They speak about how it launched them in the world. And for me, what that translates into, we give students the opportunity with a faculty mentor to create themselves for the first time. And they will go out from Sarah Lawrence and need to recreate themselves, we know now in this world, at least 7 times over. The world is not one where you walk into a certain career and you stay there until the end. So you learn here with a partner how to ask questions, how to ask hard questions. And you go out with the confidence of having developed the ability to do that so you can translate that. That's the big picture that we strive for, but Kenwell and Danny can talk about how we do that on the ground.
Sure, I can talk about the academic end of it. As Crystal said, and as I said before in answering another question, the emphasis here is really about crafting a path, crafting an intentional path, and doing that with your eyes wide open and from multiple critical vantage points. So the ways in which students work with faculty in individual classes, with their academic advisors, and the fact that they are taking courses across the liberal arts spectrum, not bound by any prescribed paths, means that they are building into their 4 years the sort of flexibility of mind and openness that we think is really going to be important as they enter the world and they decide what they're going to do in that world and inventing themselves. In addition to what happens in the classroom, we have a strong link between our Community Partnerships Office, which is an office that really helps students find meaningful placements in a variety of different community organizations in which to work and to tie that work in with their academic work here. And with Career Services. Career Services, it's not just a place where students sort of drop in and get information about internships, externships, that sort of thing. They can certainly do that, but the people who work in Career Services are always working strongly with the faculty to make sure, again, that those opportunities are tied to their students' academic base here.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you talk about practice-based experience, and Kenwell really hit on it, there are many different opportunities, and whether they're during the academic year or over the summer, whether they're on campus or off campus, we have some fantastic practice-based experience where students work directly with faculty in research, of course, in the sciences, and over the summer we have a number of students who stay on campus and work with those faculty. We also have students who work throughout the year, but also over the summer with our psychology faculty conducting research. And that's a very important practice-based experience for those students. And it's just not the sciences, it's just not psychology. Political science, there are many different areas where students will work with faculty, not only Sarah Lawrence faculty, but will actually make connections with other researchers that our faculty know, and will work in locations like Boston at MIT, for example, this past summer. So there are those experiences. And then, of course, there's community partnerships, which is a fantastic and rich experience. And our Office of Community Partnerships develops relationships with agencies in our area, in our community. So it's just not one-off volunteerism. It really is established relationships of ongoing work that our students engage in. And that's very important. So our community partners work very closely with our faculty and work very closely with our Office of Community Partnerships. Our Office of Career Services, and Crystal said it at the beginning, and I think it's important to highlight, really what the network does for our students. There's a network that involves faculty, involves alumni, and involves parents. And those three groups are absolutely critical for the practice-based experiences of our students and those opportunities. So last year we had over 350 students participate in an internship over the year. Those experiences are rich. They're not just local to the New York City area, although many are. They're throughout the country. In fact, we've had several students in Minnesota over last summer doing an experience there for their internship. So when we talk about the importance of our faculty, alumni, and parents, it's not restricted just to internships and those practice-based experience, but also our students, when they come to Sarah Lawrence in their first year studies, they have a career advisor who is assigned to their first year studies. And that advisor works with their student throughout the 4 years and the student's dawn to make sure that they have the resources. We also have a 4-year plan, so starting for first years, there are certain activities that we encourage students to engage in, and that carries throughout their 4 years here. And then finally, it's interesting because our career model is a faculty-alumni cooperative model. So our career advisors work closely with our alumni and our Office of Alumni Relations, as well as our faculty in helping to guide students.
in that, and then we'll go to this question, by saying, so on the one hand, we put a high bar for your students to say, with a partner, you are going to craft a path. And for some of our students, they will know when they arrive what direction they think they want that path to take. For others, it will be like this, like this, like this, like this over the part of their education. That's what a liberal arts education allows you to do. Sarah Lawrence has always been a place that has embraced the intersection of theory and practice. So we have practitioners on our faculty. We have theorists on our faculty. Our job is to curate and open up and make the connections for the breadth of experiences that students need and that they can have. Our great resource is that our curriculum allows us to do that. And it allows us to open up those paths in ways that will meet and move where students are. I hear regularly from people who've had Sarah Lawrence interns that they love their Sarah Lawrence interns because they can say, go do this thing, go research this. And the Sarah Lawrence student goes off and they come back with it. And their student who is there from another institution says, well, what do you mean? What are you asking for? Would you like me to do this question or tell me what to go? And that we have fostered that kind of independence of learning that allows students to really go out and succeed. Question just here, and I'll try to keep looking around the room. Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on the first question that was asked about the apparent paucity when one looks at the course catalog of courses in, biology, chemistry, physics, the sciences, AI, robotics, and genetic engineering, and sort of fields that are, and economics as well, fields that are, sort of at the center of where our economy and the world is moving, and then a very large focus in Sarah Lawrence's traditional liberal arts courses. So I was wondering, have other people had that reaction, and is the school considering focusing more resources on the areas that I just mentioned, sort of the more scientific, economic areas, and how does that happen at Sarah Lawrence? How does change like that get implemented?
So let me take the higher level part of that, and Kenwell and I will tag team this. First is the confidence that our students are going out and doing incredibly well when they're applying to med school. We sent kids off to PhDs in various areas last year. They competed incredibly well for the students who were moving into that. And I'm thinking name by name of the students who are doing that. Our students have an opportunity that many other institutions are trying to create, which is how do you find the intersection of creative work, artistic work, and sciences. What you're hearing from many places is they're trying now to understand what design means in relation to engineering, or where that intersection is. For us, that kind of intersection is an easy one, as is the one that moves across the disciplines. You get multiple prefixes now, right? It's not just biology, it's chemical XYZ, because they're merging together. So in many ways for us, we're already positioned for that kind of merging because we hadn't created the separate silos. So we try to understand both where we need to be in terms of how knowledge is moving and how we provide that experience for our students. Are we going to suddenly shift and put all of our resources in an area that's not been our traditional strength? No. Are we going to make sure we provide those areas? Yes. So sometimes for us, it's not about how many full-time faculty we have. It's about what are the opportunities that we make available and how do we do that. So we have a whole program of externships now that is funded externships, and we have connections with over 150 labs. You may or may not, how many people know we have a master's degree in genetic counseling? Okay, we had the first master's degree in the country in genetic counseling. Over half of the genetic counselors in the U.S. are our graduates. The leader of every major program in genetic counseling in the U.S. is a Sarah Lawrence graduate. So we actually have access into field placements that we have had for many, many years as part of that program. We have a health advocacy program. So we are looking right now to say, how do we leverage what we've done on the graduate and professional level and make sure that we turn back and make that available in modular ways for our undergraduates. There's a comment there, and I'll let them answer. Yeah. Let me let Kenwell answer that.
want to second everything that Crystal said and then just point out a couple of specific things. Our externship program is very successful. It's quite competitive. Students have paid externships throughout the summer to do work. These are students who have already done research on campus and now are competitive to go into labs, into hospital research units, into other university research units, generally in the tri-state area, though they can go beyond if they want. We also have we are one of the partners with Columbia in their 3-2 engineering program, so students can come here, do 3 years at Sarah Lawrence, 2 at Columbia, and then finish with both a Bachelor of Arts in the Liberal Arts and a Bachelor of Science in whatever subfield of engineering that they choose to do. I would say the great strength of Sarah Lawrence in the technical fields is that one becomes involved in research almost at the point that one enters the door, and that really is different. A lot of times in the more technical fields at the undergraduate level, research happens when one has attained a certain standing, junior level standing, for example, or has completed a number of courses. We get students involved in identifying a problem, understanding how to craft that problem into a manageable experiment, for example, or a manageable theoretical investigation. Those things are really difficult skills to develop, and we start that development very, very, very early. And that gives our students a great leg up when they want to go into more advanced work.
As a president, and for those of you who are running businesses or thinking about organizations, no small liberal arts college is in the position right now to suddenly build something that looks like the major scientific infrastructure at research universities. And to go down that path, which many institutions have tried to do, to become a mini university, is not to leverage the resources we have. And for us, it's how do we leverage the openings, the connections, the expertise of our faculty, because to build it ourselves is going to add to your tuition bill. So how do we provide the opportunities? How do we make the partnerships to ensure that our students can do everything that someone from another institution has, and know that we're not going to personally be providing all of that? Question here, and then I'll try to, yep.
I'm Janice Okamian. I'm from Rhode Island. I'm a parent of a first-year student. And full disclosure, I'm also a college educator. That's part of the spirit that this question comes from. So the humanities and the arts, the liberal arts in general, but especially humanities and arts, have been under attack nationally for some time now by people who think that the only kind of education worth getting is the kind of education, A, that can be measured, quantitatively in terms of outcome assessments, and B, that leads you directly into your job career. And I'm just wondering if, and of course that it's public institutions, typically they get hardest hit by that because their funding has been so deeply cut. But I'm wondering if Sarah Lawrence has experienced any of that kind of pressure and how you respond to it.
Well, I don't think it's only the publics that are sitting at the center of our national dialogue about what is the role of higher education, what is the role of the arts and humanities, what is it to be an educated human being. We are, as you know, committed to the liberal arts. We only give a BA in the liberal arts, right? We're not even with the area of majors within that. And that was a philosophical decision from the beginning of the college that we have stuck to. So the small liberal arts colleges are facing that challenge just as much as the big publics. Those with large endowments face it differently. We are not an institution with a large endowment. We have done a great job in our current capital campaign. So for me, it's incumbent, and I've been in a lot of meetings this year, for us as higher education to tell our story differently to the country and why a liberal arts education actually does prepare you in ways that will be a lifetime preparation, not the first job out and then the only one. So we certainly face it, and we're thinking about how we tell that story. Some of you know I was at the Mellon Foundation for a period before I came to Sarah Lawrence, thinking about higher education across the whole landscape of the U.S. So we are trying to stay very much connected into that question of access. We have to prove our value to you, and our value to you is what our alums do, and what I tell our alums is they need to be invested in us because the value of their degree depends on the students who are here now and what they do after they leave, right? That ultimately It's true, right? The value of the degree for someone who graduated 10 years ago goes up or down on the kind of work that our students and our faculty do now and what they go out and do and what the network becomes. So there's a real reason for that investment. The question, okay, let's go back here just because yep.
Quick statement, another question. So on the current theme of PhD in physics and venture capital investing in technology is sort of about, I think it's great my son is here. No danger of becoming an engineer, but you're on the middle of the night and you write a paragraph. And when I see the work I do, being able to communicate is a lost art, and I'm very happy to hear folks saying that. In your initial conversation, you talked about the diversity of our campus, which again is phenomenal, very self-evident, and how important that is in the current bifurcating state of our country. I would hypothesize or argue that, that philosophically, and politically, this campus is fairly focused on one end of that bifurcation. Again, it's not a surprise, it's something we want to do. But in order to help bridge gaps, what are you doing on campus with the student body to?
So it's a great question. And those of you who are parents will also notice somebody introduced themselves as a PhD in physics and a college professor and so on. And we are, our family group is overrepresented by people who are themselves educators, which we see as a real value in a recognition of the value of the kind of education. We also have a number of our graduates who are in Silicon Valley because they can both code and they can make a paragraph in the middle of the night, and it's very important to have those connections. I mentioned the series Difference in Dialogue. Last year we spent time on democracy and education, exactly to get at this theme about how diverse are we actually here, how well are we teaching our students to really encounter views that are different than theirs, to learn what that is. And so for each of these panels that we're doing with Difference in Dialogue, it is modeling for them perspectives that are coming from different parts, politically, ideologically. That was the deal for faculty who have applied for funds to incorporate this with their class. Sometimes they'll say, I have this great speaker, and we're like, okay, that would be a monologue. This has to be a dialogue. And they'll say, no, it's somebody who can represent the whole spectrum. And we say, no, that's not it for our students. We want you to put two people into real dialogue. So on November 12th, 16th, sometime in November, we have DeRay McKesson, who was an activist who was part of the Black Lives Matter movement, who has a book that has just come out, in conversation with Sandy Unger. Sandy runs the Free Speech Institute at Georgetown University and is very much a free speech absolutist. The two of them take a very different stance on the role of speech, free speech, hate speech, what you can moderate or not. They know how to engage each other. We've asked them for readings ahead so that some will be joining them as classes. They'll be here during the day. And then for our students, the point is to model what it is to disagree on some fundamental issues and to leave the space and the understanding that you may presume or assume how another person thinks without actually understanding that at all. So how do you make a relationship that's first human and not then project onto them what I describe as an exclusive inclusivity? Right? So we are very inclusive as long as you agree with us. Okay? So we are trying to really build that not only into the curriculum, but into all kinds of ways that we are traveling this campus, because if we become only like-minded, we first off are not educating our students, and we are not serving the future, and we're not serving them for when they move beyond this campus. I don't know if you want to add. I mean, Danny.
The only thing I can add really to that, and we kind of talked about this when we were discussing sexual violence and harassment and the initiatives there is a similar infrastructure, if you will, when it comes to diversity. And of course, when you talk about diversity, you're talking about multiple identities: sexual, gender, ethnic, racial, political, the whole spectrum. And I think, in that infrastructure, we have student groups who address those multiple identities and try to educate and raise awareness. It starts with orientation and throughout the year. We have our Office of Diversity and Campus Engagement that does ongoing programming and education. We have our spaces, our identity spaces, LGBTQIA, as well as Common Ground, where consider safer spaces where students can talk and have dialogue. We also have our Committee on Diversity, which is a faculty committee consisting of faculty, students, and staff that really look at the bigger pictures when it comes to diversity in our community. And of course, we have a Dean of Equity and Inclusion who kind of guides that. So the only thing I can add is that there is infrastructure around that looks at it in a consistent way, not just what some colleges unfortunately have had to deal with, and that is a reactive way. We try to be proactive as well.
About this. The reason that we designed the program Difference in Dialogue in the way that we did, there is, some would say, a coercive aspect because we brought prominent speakers, one of whom many of our students might like to hear, and another of whom they either wouldn't come here or they would protest. And to say we're going to put it in the room, because if you have somebody you really want to hear who is prepared to be in dialogue with somebody you would protest, what does that say and how do we create that space? And so we thought quite intentionally about that kind of programming to model for it, because otherwise you have people just coming to hear what they think, becoming ever more like-minded in who they come hear or who they come encounter. And so.
Just quickly, that we started talking about constructing this idea of difference in dialogue a year ago. And we have, and your students may tell you, we have students on virtually every campus governance committee. And those students on those committees were quite helpful in helping us understand what they felt was happening across campus and saying we really do need to figure out ways and structures to open up the space for this kind of dialogue. So it was students themselves who were quite helpful in constructing some of the programming that we have.
Hi. Excuse me. Hi, Crystal. Carrie Waterson, we had some communication about some of these issues. So my question would be, given all that, which sounds great, what steps is the school contemplating in regards to building resilience, right? Safe spaces and all this stuff is great, but once the students graduate and they're out in the cold, ugly, hard world, there aren't going to be safe spaces, right? So they're going to have to deal with situations and people who may not be as accepting or whatnot. And what is the school doing to help build up that resilience and to prepare them for the cruel realities that they're going to face?
It's interesting because there's what happens inside the classroom, and I think it does happen inside the classroom. And if you talk to students, part of the seminar system really is for some challenging and difficult conversations that come through the material. And I think that's in the classroom where it happens. And if you talk to our faculty, they would affirm that. I think outside the classroom, we're a 24/7 campus, so it happens in the residences, right, with our RAs, and we have a wonderful system of resident advisors who are trained to help facilitate and mediate conversations that can be difficult. Because when you're living 2 or 3 in a room, you're going to have some disagreements. It's inevitable. And how you navigate that becomes important, both from a community living situation, but ideologically as well. Now, on top of that, there is certainly ongoing programming that we provide to students and having those conversations that are challenging. I can tell you, they're not easy conversations. And that's not only true for Sarah Lawrence, I think that's true across our country and in higher education. So they are difficult, and it is difficult for a student to learn to navigate that. I mean, we have the fortunate condition in that we're working with young adults, but sometimes we forget the first term of that phrase, that these are young people, and they're having to learn some difficult things. So.
I think every campus in the country is trying to figure this out, right, at this moment in time. How do you, on the one hand, create enough sense of home, belonging, part of a community to then have the ability to be made profoundly uncomfortable, which is what learning is often about. And so we're trying to strike that right balance. Some places have gone from one extreme to one extreme. University of Chicago has said we're going to be at this place, and they've done that very publicly. Then they've still got all their student and staff and people working behind the scenes to create the identities and the spaces. Others have gone in a way that you wonder where there's any space for difference. So it's a question that we think about daily. We also are trying, I think we do it a lot in this community by the ways that we create community engagement. So our students who are working in Yonkers had a moment, a faculty member will tell this story at the Center for the Urban River. He had brought a local law enforcement, member of local law enforcement into the class. It was in the midst of some challenging times for thinking about relationships with law enforcement in this country and with Black lives. And he created a space where they could have a conversation that at the beginning the students, frankly, some of the students didn't want to have. So I would echo that for Kenwell, for us, because we're such an academic place, that doing it through the classroom and then giving the skills to say, and now you need to take it out, is the best place for us to work on that.
We talk about how to walk that line. What does safety mean, right? There's physical safety, there's psychological safety, but intellectual safety is probably something that we don't want to engage in. And that is something that we really grapple with, and we're not alone. Yeah.
We've got time for a couple of other questions. And we will still be here afterwards, and there are people all day to take your very specific questions as well. Yeah, here.
All right, I have this completely different kind of question. When are they bringing the swing set back?
Okay. When are they bringing the swing sets back? Okay. So for first-year parents, you may or may not know that on the North Lawn there was a swing set. It was not actually here from time memorial, but it had been here. That last year, as we were doing the amphitheater work, the city of Yonkers was on the campus, and they noticed this A-frame swing set, which had broken seats, was bent and was partly on a ledge and partly on a road. And they said, you can't do that, in more or less. And we started a conversation then about a few things. What does the swing set symbolize for us? It symbolizes that we're a place that is park-like in our setting, that looks unlike other campuses, and that we know our students like to sit in motion, right? That there is something about that activity sometimes. For our alums, it turns out that particular swing set, even alums who thought they were connected to it when they were here and it wasn't here when they were here, had nothing to do with what they thought our current students needed. It was about that they proposed marriage there, or that they this, that, or the other. We are going to replace the swing set. We were not happy with the designs that we saw, because the old A-frame swing set, there's a reason they don't make those anymore. And we wanted to be sensitive. So Danny is leading a discussion, and Mo is here. So is Mo still here? So we're talking with students. We're trying to figure out how they like to sit in motion and where, and so what the most appropriate way to do that is. But it's an interesting parable, or I would say it's a parable, because how much of it is how do we maintain something that has been an important part of who the experience, and it has a tangible sense of the experience, but how do we also adapt that for this moment and how we go forward, right? So why are you connected to it? How do we understand that? So I can't tell you exactly what's going to emerge. It might be that we have, to the question of how do we create contact, it might be that we have wooden, facing each other, gliders. So we haven't done designs. We're going to do the focus groups and understand. We had some conversations, Mo led a number of conversations last spring when we thought we could more or less replace it in the same place with something similar. And then we saw the designs, and my inbox would be filled if we put up a sort of bar U-type design that matched nothing about what we were around. So there will be some sort of swing to emerge. And we'll have that conversation. We hope it'll be soon. Right, right. So we will, but Senate and others are leading that conversation. Right over here.
Hi, I'm Anna Schindler-Brennan. I'm from Chicago. My daughter Ava is a freshman at Hillhouse, and in meeting many of her friends and roommates and people along the way yesterday, I was struck by how many of them are vegetarian. And you mentioned Alice Waters. I was curious, they all seem to have something to say about the food. And is there a way for students to connect with food service and be part of the governance of how they source and the food chain and everything else as part of the inherent?
Yeah. So, and I actually mentioned Alice Walker is our alum, the author of The Color Purple. Alice Waters is also fabulous, but we don't have a claim to her yet. Maybe we'll work on that. So there are a number of ways that students can and do have input into our food and what happens. We have a food service, AVI. They regularly actually take comments from students. Students may not realize that they do that. They solicit those comments. There are ways of doing feedback. Sometimes in their first year, it takes a while for our students to actually understand the range of options that they do have if they have restrictions on their dining. But Danny, I don't know if you want to.
Sure. I mean, there are the formal ways of students give feedback. One, they could do it directly to AVI. We also have a campus committee around dining, which students do then meet with our director of dining services and AVI to discuss these issues, which is very important. And so that's another way. One of the things which you may not be aware of, because sometimes our students aren't aware of it, is that our vendor, AVI, is actually very flexible. So they will prepare on request meals. So if your student goes to Bates, they can go and ask one of the chefs for a special request, which is unusual. Usually, in dining, and if you've seen other dining halls, there are the trays of food, and that's what you get. But they will actually prepare based on request to meet dietary needs.
The other thing is we are also in a period of transition because the Barbara Walters Campus Center, the food service that's presently in the pub, will move into the campus center in a much more expanded place. It's not taking the place of Bates. It's in addition to, but it puts more options on this end of campus. And so over this year, we're working with AVI about what that looks like. So it's a really good time for students to step up and either be on those committees or to make known what they're looking for. So with the mention of food, I think I'm going to call us to a close. We have, I'm going to let Paige give you some logistic information, and thank you, and we'll be here to take your questions, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Crystal. So welcome again. Hopefully the rain will cease. It might have already, and hopefully we're going to have a little bit of sun out later this afternoon. But I wanted to do a few logistical pieces. For those of you who may have mobility concerns, we do have shuttles running. They actually will meet right out here by the rock figure, the big rock figure, and it'll have campus shuttle on it. And it's happy to take you anywhere you need to go on campus, particularly for Bates, where the brunch is, where you'll be going down, hopefully meeting with your student, if you haven't already, for the brunch that they rave about. It will take you onto the Kimball, and then they'll keep running so that you can get it to come back up for the sessions. The sessions will start at 1 o'clock. Unfortunately, the first round of sessions will not be repeated, so for families, I usually say divide and conquer if you can. I know I've talked to one family already. There is a session on career services, which I know was brought up, which will definitely share the experience that students have had in their internships, but also we'll talk about the plans for first year, second year, and third year, and fourth years that career services offers to our students. And study abroad will also have a second session. Many of your students want to go abroad. They will answer a lot of your questions about that experience and also about your financial aid and kind of how that applies to study abroad. For any of you who have siblings here or younger children, I should say, there is The Incredibles 2 showing over at Heimbold, but we're going to re-show it tonight at 8 o'clock in the Miller Lecture Hall for families to go to. There will probably be popcorn there. So I know I've been to Incredibles 2. I will have my kids there probably tonight. Also, you might hear them giggling quite a bit because one's kind of loud. Yes, and then the other piece is that
We want to make sure that if you have any questions at all, please let us know. You will see posters everywhere with the schedules on it, and there are a lot of us around for the afternoon. We hope you will enjoy the faculty seminars. Yes, students can attend the faculty seminars. I know that's been a question already. You can attend those for the students. But if you have any questions, let us know. We hope you will come back here, though, at 5:30. We actually have a cabaret, which will highlight student performances, everything from singing to sword fighting, stage combat. So please help yourself to lunch. And again, we'll be here afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you all.